This meeting back to order. We were meeting in closed session earlier. There was a motion to move out of closed session made by Ms. Crumiller and a second by Mr. Miller. And then I looked up and everybody had left and gone to the bathroom. So can we just officially vote on moving out of closed session?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay. So welcome to the council meeting of March 27th, 2017. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start tonight's meeting with some announcements, and I'll start on my right with Ms. Howard. Any announcements for this evening? Mr. Liverman?
Yeah, I just want to announce that on April 21st, Corner House will have their annual spring benefit at the Mercer County Boathouse. And also on May 2nd, 2017, at the Friends Center, William Moyers, Bill Moyers' son, will have a program there called A Message on Addiction. And tickets can be purchased through Corner House. Thank you.
Mr. Miller? Ms. Crumiller? And Mr. Quinn?
No.
Any announcements? All right. I just have a few announcements. The first is that the library's Environmental Film Festival kicks off tonight, and they have a really great lineup this year, so I encourage everybody to look at the library website to see the films. Also, I'll be holding my monthly Meet the Mayor session on Friday morning from 8:30 to 10 a.m. in the library lobby. That's this Friday, March 31st. And then the last announcement is we have another council meeting this upcoming Monday night, so on April 3rd. I'm just reminding all my colleagues. That happened because the following Monday, I believe, is when we normally meet, and that's the first night of Passover. So we made an adjustment to the schedule. And also because I love seeing you all frequently. So we'll be here next Monday. And I guess one final announcement is that normally our attorney at our meetings is Trishka Cecil, but we're joined tonight by Lucille Davey, so welcome. And she's also here from NGP filling in for Trishka. And are there any staff reports, staff announcements? Deanna?
Starting on Wednesday, March 29th, NJDOT will be closing 206 PSE&G will be closing 206 just south Quaker Road to do utility pole installation. It will be closed between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. For 7 continuous days until they complete the work. And we have the notices posted on the website with the detours, and all of the detours will be signed out in the field to direct people around the area. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff announcements? Okay. We'll move on then to approval of the minutes. We have several sets of minutes here tonight. Can we take them all as a block? All right, so we have January 9th closed session, January 9th open session, January 23rd closed session, minutes from January 23rd, February 22nd, the meeting of February 27th closed session, and the regular meeting from February 27th. Is there a motion to move all these minutes? Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimously. And I want to thank the clerk's office for turning through all of those. It's terrific. Next we come to comments from the public for items that are not already on the agenda. I just would ask you to come to the microphone. Did anybody sign the sheet ahead of time? No. No, okay. Then if you just come to the microphone and line up, and we ask that you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, and when you start, to say your name clearly so that we can make sure it gets into the minutes accurately.
Well, we live in a development called Heatherstone, which is off of Princeton Pike on Hale Drive. If you go down the battlefield and go over the little bridge.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just start by stating your name so we
Oh,
can
I'm
get it
sorry,
for the minutes?
James Strauss. I'm a resident of Heatherstone. So Heatherstone is located, after you go over the little bridge, 2nd Street on the right. And we have in front of you a proposal to fix our street and put Belgian block in around the street, basically. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Noah, I have some,
What do you
Other-
mean in front of us? I'm sorry.
say that again?
Did you hand something out? You said in front of us.
I'm going to hand
Oh, okay.
something out. Do you want me to do that now?
Also, council, it's also a request, it's on the capital plan, so that's one reason why they're,
Yeah.
You want to address it now, the Belgian block proposal?
If you could state your name, it was just, we
Okay,
haven't seen anything.
my name is Robert Feckman. I'm also a resident of Heatherstone. We had been working with Bob Kaiser for about 2 years on a proposal amongst our community to have the streets repaved and Belgian block installed. I gather you've done this in other areas of the town or township, and our residents are very much in favor of going forward with that project. We have 30 residents in our neighborhood. All of them have signed a preliminary agreement to move it forward, which I believe is on your agenda tonight. It's absolutely imperative that we do this. Our streets haven't been paved in 30 years. They're an absolute mess through flooding from the Stony Brook. The water gets under the pavement, freezes, cracks, and it's repaired, recracks, repaired, recracked, et cetera. So, it's a continuing problem over a long period of time. The Belgian block solution is a good one. It was proposed, again, by Bob Kaiser. Our residents have agreed in principle that we would pay for the Belgian block, and the township would pay for the repaving of the streets, which is 4 cul-de-sacs. And we're just here tonight to voice support for that project and hopefully get it moving in 2017.
Okay, thank you. If you had anything that you wanted to give to us, you can hand it to the,
I'd like to hand something out to you.
okay.
Give you a little bit of history, and I have a great deal of respect for you, particularly those that aren't paid to do this. But our development has a history of neglect. Yeah. Our development has a history of neglect. When I've been living there for 25 years, and I noticed, early on that it was awfully dark from Princeton Pike to my house. I'm the first house on the right. And I called up Bob Kaiser, and we discovered that whoever put in the streetlights missed one. So Princeton came and put the streetlight in. This picture is another example. That's the entrance to our development. And they obviously did some electrical work, and they've left a fallen telephone pole that they've attached to the other one via rope. And it's literally on the entrance of our development. So, and to reemphasize, this street has been a mess for many, many years. I happen to think Washington Oaks, which is a development behind us, has a lot to do with the changing the water, and that's caused cracking. But he's 100% right. You come in, you patch it. This has been going on for 20 years. You patch it, then it falls apart, then you patch it again. And it's just, I hate to say this, but it's really it's a dump. And we pay in excess of $20,000 in real estate taxes. It's just not right. So we obviously feel, and I say that with all due respect to you.
No, well, thank you for coming. And I know we have our capital plan coming up soon. I'm not sure. We can check the
actually,
shield.
our next meeting next Monday, that's when, as council's aware, we have about $7 million to spend this year on capital funds. The requests for this year are above that. So on Monday night, we will begin the process of looking at a prioritized list. So council will start that decision-making starting Monday night.
Do we attend that or no?
You can attend.
Okay, but we don't present at all. We just,
You can make public comments
Okay.
again that night.
thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight.
Well, one thing that, I mean, this is PSE&G, and I don't know if we've called PSE&G on their behalf, but maybe we could if we haven't.
Yes, we've called PSE&G. They've changed their lines over, and today, actually, we've sent a letter off to Verizon because they're next in line to change their utilities and take the pole out.
Great, thank you very much.
And that's only been in existence for maybe 5 months. It hasn't been like that for 10 years.
Right,
Okay.
well, that's good, I guess. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Okay. I was wondering from my colleagues if there would be a motion to amend the agenda to move up the Resolution 17107, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of an assignment and assumption consent agreement and an estoppel certificate in connection with the assignment of the power purchase agreement and solar lease agreement by and between Princeton, Stony Brook Regional Sewage Authority, and GeoPeak Energy, since we have the attorney here for that project.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Howard to amend the agenda to take up that resolution next. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so then we will take up that resolution. Okay, terrific, thank you.
Whoops. Good evening. So I think you'll recall there was a power purchase agreement entered in through public procurement involving Stony Brook Regional and your landfill site. It's a great opportunity for both parties. Princeton will be receiving a lease payment from the project once it's constructed. Stony Brook will receive the power. The company that signed the PPA is called GeoPeak. And GeoPeak last year, through a process, I think in August, we provided an amendment to the power purchase agreement. It's been taking a little longer for Princeton to complete the landfill cap improvements at the site. And of course, at the same time, GeoPeak has been applying for permits, and they've been moving forward. There's been regular discussions. There was also an issue at Stony Brook involving the switchgear, which is a little older than was anticipated. GeoPeak has included switchgear in as part of the project at this point. So that's been resolved. But all in all, GeoPeak's intention last year with the amendment was to include language involving an assignment. We worked on that language with, actually one of the former council persons had many questions about that section. We looked at that in detail. We went over it at a couple of meetings and ultimately agreed on some language that all the parties were in favor of. GeoPeak is now asking to assign those contracts, the lease and the power purchase agreement, to NJR. I provided in my packet to you some information about NJR. It's a Fortune 1000 company. There are projects in the state that my firm and that your consultant have awarded to NJR in separate public procurements, and they have performed admirably on those contracts. So this evening we are asking you to consider by resolution granting authority to authorize the execution of the assignment and assumption agreement and also the estoppel certificate. And I will point out the estoppel certificate ordinarily should just say that the parties have no quarrels with each other, the agreements are in full force and effect, and there's nothing to be concerned about. We are at this point out of compliance with the timelines in the agreement because we're still working on the landfill cap. GeoPeak has been a good partner in that regard, and their purchaser or assignee has indicated that they will fully intend to cooperate in that process, and so they included in the estoppel certificate an extension of time, put it on paper, to allow Princeton through the end of April to complete the landfill project. And that, according to Bob Huff, is enough time in order for us to do that.
Are there any questions from council?
Ryan, can you give us a brief rundown on NJR, what they do, where they do it?
Yeah. So throughout the state, they have, I think in the summary that I provided you with, they have multiple subsidiary companies. They're all wholly owned by the parent company. The good thing about NJR, and the one thing you look for in a PPA partner, if you can find it, is a diversified utility company. So they're not solely relying on a solar project or a number of solar projects to be their bread and butter. They sell natural gas. They have ownership in other resource and electricity generation components around the country. And in this region, they are quite a big force in South Jersey. As I said before, they've won a couple of power purchase agreements. Franklin Township Board of Ed is one of them. They built that project. It's been operating for a number of years without any concerns on the solar side. So they are a well-qualified company. You do have the right under the agreement to investigate the company that is becoming the assignee. I talked it over with Lee. I've spoken with John Kantorek over at Stony Brook. Given who NJR is and their ability to point to their own assets and accomplishments here in the state, nobody seemed to think it was warranted to spend much time on doing a detailed investigation of the company. It is a publicly traded entity, so.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? No? All right. Well, the resolution has there been a motion for the resolution or just to change the agenda? I think we need to go back and make a, all right, so is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Krummeller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very
Resolution
much.
passes. Thank you very much. This is an exciting project too, so we're looking forward to updates as it progresses. All right, so now we'll go back to reports, and we'll start with the police report from January 2017. And I'd like to invite up the lieutenant. If you can come around, actually, then we can see your face.
Good evening, everyone. Just a few items to report to you in regards to some current activities within the police department. First, as you're aware, our accreditation on-site was earlier this month, a few weeks ago, back in the beginning of March. Very pleased to present to you that it went very well. We had 2 assessors from the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police come down. They reviewed all the internal policies of the police department. We provided them with documentation showing that not only do we follow our policies, but they also meet the 105 standards established by the Accreditation Commission. They conducted interviews with sworn and civilian staff in the police department, performed a facility inspection, a ride-along with some of our officers. They tested our property and evidence function, and there was also a 2-hour call-in session for the public to make comment on. During our exit interview, they found no issues with regards to the way the police department operates as it relates to the accreditation process. So it was very much a team effort to get there, and they will be recommending us for reaccredited status. So the next step for us will be in June. We'll attend the State Chiefs Accreditation Commission hearing. We'll go there, we'll present in front of them, they'll review the report, and we fully anticipate to be reaccredited on that day. So it's every 3 years we go through this process, and the next day we started for preparing for 3 years out. So it's a never-ending cycle, but it's a fantastic accomplishment, and really everyone in the police department plays some type of role in the process. Any questions on the accreditation on-site?
I mean, just thank you to you, Chris. Are you leading the effort again this time?
That will be turned over to Lieutenant Jeff Maurer, but I'll still be overseeing the process.
It does seem like we just did it.
Yes, it does. A second item, and Jenny, this is discussed in our IT steering committees. It may have come up in our website meetings as well. I don't recall, but seamless docs. So I met with, or I should say, the chief and I met with Chris Iliff last week, and we discussed using seamless docs. To explain briefly what that is, if you're not familiar, and Jenny, you could probably explain it a little bit better than me, but essentially if you have a document like we do in the police department that the public may need on a regular basis, instead of having them to come in during business hours where they may need to take off from work or leave work early and fill out the form and then try to come back and turn it back in, we can create our documents in this Seamless Docs, upload it to the website and eventually the new website. The public can go in there. It'll be a fillable form, submit the form, and we can direct it exactly who is responsible for receiving that form. So one of the things, just as we were brainstorming, that'll be fantastic, that we think that it'll be used for when we start doing alarm registrations. And one thing we want to attach to it is that we need to research, and maybe we can discuss it in our IT steering committee meetings, along with using the Seamless Docs, but also providing payment on there as well. And it just seems like it makes things a lot easier for the public to get things done instead of having to come into the police department. Similar to that, and I don't know if Seamless Docs would be the platform for us to use, but we also provide a lot of documentation through Discovery. So when people go to court, there's a lot of information that we need to provide them as part of evidence in the discovery process. And a lot of times it's the same information over and over that we provide weekly. You know, it's a thick stack of papers. So we're going to start putting that information onto the website. So whomever needs the discovery materials, mostly attorneys, they can go on there, they can print out exactly what they need. So we're not constantly creating these thick packets of paper. And we don't know what documents they're actually going to use and what they may not use. So eventually all that's going to make its way on there. Again, we'll see if it's a Seamless Doc platform or not. I'll meet with Chris Iliff actually tomorrow, and I guess we can discuss it further if that'll be the best platform, if it's just a PDF or whatever it may be. Third, as it relates to the detour that Deanna had mentioned, we're also going to have 2 officers out there as well at the point of the detour, so it'll be Hutchison and Lovers. Those officers are being directed not just to provide the detour, but to be there to communicate with the public and help the motoring public get around the detour as well. So we'll have officers out there every day. And lastly, as I'm sure you're aware, after 31 years of service to the Princeton community, Lieutenant Rob Toole will be retiring this Friday. So Friday at 12 o'clock, I invite everyone down to come down and wish Rob the best in his retirement. It's a lot of institutional knowledge he's going to be walking out the door, and he will definitely be missed by the police department. So please, we ask you to come down and say thank you and wish him all the best.
I'll start with a question that retirement sort of begs. I know there's been a lot of turnover in the police department,
Yes.
and we're low on some of the top ranks now. And
Yes.
next meeting, we'll be having a promotion ceremony. We're going to have a resolution in front of council, and there's going to be some changes in the police department. I don't know if you want to preview any of that or wait till next week.
No, absolutely. We're looking forward to it. We have a lot of officers. We're going to make a new sergeant, a new corporal, 2 new sergeants, and a new lieutenant with Lieutenant Chris Tash coming next week. So we're very excited about bringing in some young blood, so to speak. But in the same breath, with Lieutenant Toole leaving, it'll be a bit of a change for us.
Ms. Howard?
Yes, it really is a loss. Rob has given so much, so
Fantastic.
please convey to him,
We will.
you know, that you didn't want to torture him his last week by making him come to our meeting, or? So I start with news out of Washington, which is not usually a good start to a question, which is that, I don't know whether you saw that the Attorney General Sessions late today, so you may not yet have seen, made a pronouncement about perhaps sort of continuing on the President's executive order and withholding federal Department of Justice funding from what they term sanctuary cities. Have you seen that announcement today?
I have not. I'm not exactly sure what those comments are. But in regards to the immigration status, nothing has changed within the police department. We are still governed by Attorney General guidelines that are very, very restrictive in what we can inquire about someone's immigration status. We physically do not support ICE when they come into town. We are more about community involvement and trying to educate the community about the police department. In that regard, Patrolman George Narvez has been absolutely fantastic. One of the latest things that he's done, he went to Lucy's Ravioli, and there was also another restaurant that they invited from Rocky Hill. The name escapes me right now, but they had 12 people there that he had the opportunity to address about the police department and what we do and what we won't do. That presentation actually was given in English and in Spanish. So our Safe Neighborhoods Bureau thought that it was well received by everyone there, and it's something that they're trying to incorporate with some other local businesses as well.
Oh, that's fabulous. And he and Elisa Nera are often a dynamic duo
Yes.
going out. And, I think you've said it well, that our current policy is what it has always been, which is that we follow the Attorney General directive, but we go beyond that in the sense that we're welcoming community and we're doing all this kind of outreach. But our policies have not changed over the last several years.
No, not at all.
So, I mean, I'll do the editorial comment so that it's for me to say, not for you, that it's very frustrating and unfortunate and counterproductive, I would say, that they're continuing, that those kind of efforts from the federal level undermine all the good will that we've been trying to garner in our efforts. So, but thank you for reminding us about our continued efforts.
Are there any other questions for the lieutenant? Yep, Ms.
Yeah, I
Carmelo?
do. Oh, thanks a lot. I'm excited about the technology, making things easier for citizens. That's great. This is another subject. I was reading that a police officer is going to the high school to a class and giving a talk on what to do if you get stopped by the police. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I believe we went twice.
You've done it?
I have not. Our
Oh,
Safe Neighborhood
because I always get these things from the ACLU about what to do if you're stopped by the police, and I'm just wondering if they're the same, because I always wonder when I see that the police have found marijuana in somebody's car, how they, why didn't the person just say no? You're not allowed to search, because they're not allowed to search the car, right? And I always wonder how. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I hope you're telling what exactly do you tell the kids about when you get stopped?
We provide a lot of information. A lot of it is about safety and why we do some of the things that we do, why we may stop you, where the stop may take place. If questions come up regarding search and seizure, sure, we'll educate them. A lot of times these different programs are developed. We go to the schools and we say, what are your children interested in? We just want to get into the schools and try to create relationships with the students. So if it's making motor vehicle stops and what can we do, what can't we do, we'll research it from various perspectives and present that. But search and seizure itself is very specific on a case-by-case basis to give a blanket statement of when we can and when we can't search.
Well, I know, but I mean, so the ACLU videos that I've seen say specifically that the police officer will say, "Do you mind if I search?" And that if the person says yes, they've given consent, but that they don't have to.
Correct. They do not have to.
And so I'm wondering if you tell that to the students.
I haven't seen the presentation, to be honest with you. I don't know how that was conveyed.
Just because I thought because the video that I have seen about what to do if you're stopped by the police is probably very similar to what be polite,
Sure.
All the stuff to do to be safe and respectful, of course, but also that you have the right to decline a search. It seemed like that was I just wondered if.
Again, I haven't seen the presentation, but I know the
Okay.
officers that gave it, and if that question came up, they would answer it, according to law.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you very much, and congratulations on the accreditation.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really great.
Okay, we'll move on to Deanna Stockton, a report by Engineering Department regarding proposed roadway construction around Princeton in 2017.
Okay, so in the agenda packet, there was a large street map of the town that showed the various areas where road construction work is proposed.
Can you get a little closer to your mic?
Yep. Okay, I may have to move. Yes. Okay, much better. Okay, so, in the packet was the map showing the various areas of construction. And so to summarize by entity may be helpful for you. We'll try that. So PSC&G is looking to continue with gas main upgrade work this year. So first, they need to still work on final restoration of the roadways that they worked on last year, and that includes Linden, TR, and Erdman. And then the new projects that they're proposing to work on are Battle Road, 206, which actually is coincident with the 206 Bridge project. 206 would go from Quaker all the way into Lawrence on 206, and that's a gas main and services replacement. And then they're also looking at working on Basin Road and West Drive. So that would typically be daytime work within one side of the roadway, a small trench, and then they would come back and resurface the trench area after it has time to settle. Next would be New Jersey American. They also have to come back and do final paving on work that was completed last year. That includes Snowden Lane from Franklin to Overbrook, Hillside Road, and Harris. Actually, Harris will be done by Princeton. We have received approximately $11,000 from New Jersey American to be able to pay our contractor to pave Harris in conjunction with Valley Road. For Princeton, we need to complete the Valley Road project, which includes paving that first block of Harris. And we need to pave the intersection of Mountain and Great. And then related to the sanitary sewer project, we'll be resurfacing the southbound lane of Snowden from the Mercer County Bridge all the way to the area near Smoyer Park where the sanitary sewer ended, as well as a couple hundred feet on Van Dyke Road where the sewer was also installed. One big project that I'm sorry, I forgot on New Jersey American to touch on are new projects. They are looking to replace their main on Dickinson, and we would be working with them to do a resurfacing of the roadway at the same time. And the other big project for New Jersey American is a water main replacement on Nassau Street. So that would be from Harrison Street to Snowden Lane. And so it's quite an extensive project. Unfortunately, the roadway also has a concrete base, like some of the folks from the former borough can remember from Mercer Road. So they're estimating that project to be about 3 months. And at this point, working with police and public works, we would recommend that this work be done at night to minimize disruption to businesses and to residents. There will be some daytime work because they do have to come in and cut through the concrete base. And then there will be the final restoration work as well that might have to take place during the day. But we're really looking for the bulk of the work to be nighttime hours. And that could potentially start in May, and like I said, be a 3-month process. And one thing to note for that is we would like them to get in sooner than later, because they need to work in the intersection of Harrison Street. And once 206 is closed, in July for that project. If there are any trucks that are servicing downtown Princeton, the only way back to Route 1 out of our 3 routes is Harrison. So we can't have them blocking Harrison if that's our only way back out to Route 1. So that's part of why we're pushing to get this done in May so that the bulk of the work can happen and the disruption can happen before 206. Of course, the big project is the 206 Bridge project, which is looking to close 206 from July 1 to October 28th. Full closure with detours in place. Then back to the Princeton projects, we have 3 new projects that we would like to do this year, mainly because of funding reasons, and they are high-profile projects. That's the Cherry Valley Road project, and that would extend from where the county bridge project was completed at Jefferson's Curve. It would extend to the west about 200 feet past Cherry Hill. And again, that's another project where, working with police and talking through the project, we would recommend a full closure for that project, not reopening it every evening and every weekend, just because of the road is only 20 feet wide, and there's such extensive pipe work, retaining wall work. There's a lot of work involved in this project that to be the most cost effective, that's what we're recommending at this point. Please, if you have questions as I go along, please jump in.
I have a question. So how are we informing neighbors about these projects? Some of them we've already had neighborhood meetings, so is it just sending the blast out, or
Right.
some
So
of these going to be pretty disruptive?
Yeah, so each of the utilities will send out notifications to residents. They use door hangers or letters. And we typically, before the project starts with the utility companies, we will have a neighborhood meeting here with representatives of the utility companies. So that's what would take place for all of these new projects. And we post up all of the updates on the website and maintain the email list so we can keep putting blasts out. So that's what we've done with the utility companies. With Princeton's projects, Valley, Mountain, Snowden, we have a very long email list for each of those that will put out information when we're getting ready to do the final paving work. Cherry Valley Road, we did have the design meeting, so it would be something when we get to pre-construction, we would have another meeting with the neighborhood and talk through that and establish where they can get in to access properties and how that will work. And I think we'll work with them through the next couple of months as well. We've had the road closed with the tree removal work, and at this point, I think it's worked fairly smoothly to have the residents parking a little bit outside of the construction area. Just remember, construction's a moving process, and so we're not always going to have the entire area in construction. So there may be ways to allow people to still drive in and access their driveways. We just don't want the general motoring public who think that they're local traffic to think that they can keep driving through there during construction. So that's the general idea for Cherry Valley. Another big project is the Walnut Lane project. We have DOT funding for that project. We've been working closely with the school district, with facilities, and also with JW principal to talk through the different ideas of traffic calming and addressing some of the concerns that come up with traffic safety. So that should be moving ahead. Our grant requires us to be under construction by the end of June. So that coincides well with the school year. So that's moving ahead. And then the final project for Princeton that we really have as goals to complete this year is the Safe Routes to School Traffic Signals project on Harrison Street at Hamilton and Franklin. We've finally just gotten approved NEPA documents, which are an environmental report completed by DOT for the project that shows no adverse impact for the project. With that document in hand, we can now go on to the final stage, the final engineering and preparation of construction documents with our consultants. So hopefully we'll be able to be under construction in the summer, but considering it's taken us this long to get to this point, it may be that we're in the fall in construction. But the idea on that project is that we'll keep the existing signal in place and operational until the new signal is constructed and activated, and then we'll just do a switch over. So we're trying to minimize any construction and traffic impacts with that project. 2 more municipalities, counties to cover. There's a lot going on in our area this year. Montgomery has actually invited us to a pre-construction meeting tomorrow for Princeton Avenue project, which is at the northern end of our Mount Lucas Road, and it ties into 206 opposite of Cherry Valley. So they will have a resurfacing project in that area, and when I get more details, we'll get that information out to everyone. And then the
That road is 100% in Montgomery, or is it split?
That's completely Montgomery. We, Mount Lucas has the split just north of the pump station. And then the last entity is Mercer County. So Mercer County, once the 1-week utility work is completed on 206 by, I think it's April 5th, the next week Mercer County is going to jump in and do a resurfacing project on Carter Road, which will take about 4 weeks. So that's timed well that it will be completed before the full closure, because that is one of the detour routes with the 206 project. And the other project which we are working to coordinate with the county is they need to replace another culvert on Cherry Valley Road. Last year they had replaced a culvert fairly close to Province Line Road. And so now this is one more culvert a little bit east of where they were at. It's near the S-curve on Cherry Valley Road, and they are right now looking to do that work from Labor Day to Thanksgiving, and that would again be a full closure. So we'll be working hard to coordinate our Cherry Valley Road closure with their Cherry Valley Road closure to make sure they all make sense and are coordinated.
Great.
So we'll keep you updated on all of the schedules and where the impacts are. We've got a great communication team between police, Access Princeton, the website, and reaching out to our community partners like the PMA and the university to try to get the information out as much as we can.
Thank you.
Deanna, I had a question about Walnut Lane. Is that daytime work?
Yes, that'll
Okay.
be daytime.
All right, and the Nassau Street piece, some of those, the housing, the multi-unit housing toward Harrison, I'm concerned about the noise, and I'm sure that the neighbors will be. So what are the exact hours that the work will take place? And you're talking about drilling into concrete. That sounds kind of loud.
Right, well, that's where, if at all possible, if they can cut through that during the day, that's desired. DOT will establish what the actual work hours are at night because it is their roadway. They look to us for some guidance. In the past, I think when we've worked on Pine Street or to Nassau Street near Pine Street, I think the work hours were something like either 9 or 10 p.m. until about 5 a.m. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know where this would be discussed in, as far as the council goes, but have we talked about pervious surface for any of our roads that maybe aren't, heavily used roads? Because I saw some of the roads that we're doing seem like they're not really heavily trafficked roads.
Yeah, pervious surface really you can only use on walkways
Oh,
and parking lots.
Okay, I thought the stormwater people were saying that some roads, but
Not
it doesn't-
typically.
no.
Typically, and in parking lots, they're the parking
Yeah.
stalls rather than the drive areas.
yeah, but you can't make roads out of,
No,
there's
but
no solution
Cherry
yet.
Valley Road, we will be using pervious pavement on the side path.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
It sounds like you have an incredibly full plate. I'm
Yes.
exhausted just listening to the list, so.
And then just wait for my engineering report on everything else that we're working on.
All right, thank you. Let's see. And then we have a report on the valet service pilot project that we had tried this year. And Mr. DeShield, do you want to
Thank you,
talk about
Mayor.
what you found?
Just to give council a brief overview, with the pilot program beginning last year, staff took a look at the provisions of the valet parking ordinance and reviewed the current vendor. Through that process, we identified a number of areas where we found that the current vendor is in noncompliance, really in two areas. One, we have not received any revenue. Under the agreement, we were to receive 8% of the parking revenue. We have not received any revenue in accordance with this contract. In addition, the agreement requires that a certificate of insurance be provided and maintained. That certificate has not been maintained. We've reached out to the vendor. We reached out to one of the partners in the vendor. He has indicated he's no longer involved. We've then reached out to the other partners and have not received any response. At this point, at least in terms of the vendors that we currently have, they're in non-compliance with the contract. And I'd recommend, unless they can somehow rectify the situation, that we cease the license agreement.
All right, that seems like a pretty clear recommendation. And then does council have to take action? I'm trying to remember the details of that ordinance. It seems like this was maybe a pilot project that didn't work. So are we vulnerable to have that ordinance out there if there's another group that comes forward and this didn't really work out, or can we just leave it on the books as it is?
My suggestion is, one, we should take an affirmative action to end the license, and then I would just leave it on the books, and you can make a decision at a later point.
Okay, so we should have that before us at our next meeting or the one after. There's consensus for that. Okay. Mr. Miller, did you have any further comment? Okay. All right, thank you. And then we'll continue with reports with Ms. Howard. Any reports? None. Okay. Ms. Zimmerman?
Yeah, the second part of my, I guess I'm piggybacking off of Jenny Krumiller's question in regard to the ACLC in regard to the marijuana. On May 24th, we're going to have a marijuana forum at John Witherspoon School between 7 and 9 o'clock. And in this forum, we're going to the police will discuss what happens when you're pulled over with marijuana in the car. There'll also be information in regard to search and seizure, and we're looking forward to it. Last year, we did one for the opioid epidemic, the whole heroin, and we had about 170 people. So we're looking for this one to be pretty big also. And this is done by the PADA in conjunction with Princeton Police, Corner House, myself, my council, and school system. So it's a collaboration of many people. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, any reports?
I have one for Joe from the Recreation Department. She sent me I should have sent them the announcements. But the Rec Department hired a new day camp director he's a Princeton resident named Steve DeGregorio. So that's kind of exciting. And the other one is the rec office will stay open late on May 23rd and 25th for registration and pool photo IDs and anything else that people need. And that the spring sports season kicks off on April 1st.
Great, thank you. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you, Mayor. The Princeton Environmental Commission met on March 22nd. The commission approved an application to the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions for a $1,000 grant for an education program to raise awareness of invasive species, both well-established and emergent, and to train volunteers to monitor and remove invasive species in preserved open space. And I think that the commission was in touch with Mr. DeShields seeking a pro forma letter that were supporting the application. Commission reviewed its foundational work in its effort to add a sustainability element to the master plan. That's a 2018 goal. The commission reviewed Jack West's latest work on the stormwater ordinance harmonization and reached consensus on a two-part timing for the ordinances, with part one covering definitions of impervious surface and regulations regarding minor and major development. Jack indicated that part one could happen as early as April, and July would be part two, which would cover inspections and the redevelopment piece, as you'll recall from the presentation at our last meeting. Finally, Resolution 17-110, urging Congress to address climate change by enacting matched carbon fee and dividend legislation, was approved by PEC and is on the agenda for consideration tonight. The next night, the Bicycle Advisory Committee met and reviewed the final bicycle master plan, the consultant's report, and they have some recommendations that I'll ask be attached to the minutes rather than read the entire report. But their connected low-stress network is one, and safe routes to school is another major goal. They do identify specific streets, and as I said, I'll attach this for council's consideration.
And also, I maybe give it to the planning board, the recommendation, since the
Sure.
planning board is going to be the official kind of owner of that plan, I believe.
Thank you, Ms. Krummeler, I definitely will. And Deanna was at the meeting, and anything you'd like to add to that?
No, it was a great meeting. A lot of progress was made on establishing priorities and also discussing those low-stress routes. And we had a meeting today with David Cohen and planning board higher-ups about the next steps, and they were given a copy of that report.
Wonderful.
Great, thank you. I had a few reports. The first is many of us, I think almost everybody here, but I'll report to the public, was at the second floor opening at the Princeton Public Library. So I would highly encourage anybody who hasn't seen the new second floor to go and check it out. It's a really incredibly beautiful, modern space with great meeting rooms. I think it'll be just a transformative place for people who work at home, who need to hold meetings, and it's definitely looks like the library of the future. And just as a note, it was renovated almost entirely through the generosity of private donors. There's very little public money. I think it was the only public money that was used was for things that were already going to be happening anyway. So for some of the outlets, carpet replacement, that sort of thing that was already in our capital plan. So anyway, congratulations to the library, and it's a really wonderful addition to the community. Second report is Princeton signed on to an amicus brief last week in support of the city of Santa Clara, California, and they filed suit against one of President Trump's executive orders that the intention is to strip sanctuary cities of federal funding. And even though we're not officially a sanctuary city, even according to the Justice Department, I think we all felt it was important to show our solidarity with Santa Clara and other communities around the country who are concerned about the price they might pay for protecting their residents. Let's see. Probably should have mentioned this under announcements, but Princeton is going to have a climate march on April 29th here in town. It's being organized by several different groups within town, including Sustainable Princeton, and it's going to start at the DNR, and people are going to march to Heinz Plaza. So for those of you who are interested, and that's April 29th, which is a Saturday, and then the next day, Sunday, is Communiversity. Sustainable Princeton has also been working on securing funding for the Climate Action Plan, and that's coming along. And the other exciting announcement about the Climate Action Plan is, if you remember, there's a group of Princeton University students working through the Tiger Challenge program on affordable housing this year, the One Roof team. There's a new group of students that are going to be working on the first steps of the Climate Action Plan, which will be really exciting. So we're looking forward to hearing what they come up with. And then I have a couple more announcements about youth. First, we want to mention about the Youth Employment Program. So applications for the Youth Employment Program are open through Human Services for the Summer Jobs Program. And we received an additional grant this year from the Princeton Area Community Foundation, so we're very grateful for that. And that's allowed for some extra positions to be opened. And Mr. Liverman and I are working on the application for the Youth Advisory Committee. It's hard to believe, we're doing applications for that again, but we have some graduating seniors, and so there'll be some spots opening up on that, and we're hoping to have that application using Seamless Docs to be up and ready by next week. Are there any other staff reports? Do you have more reports, Ms. Stockton?
I do. I was remiss in mentioning one more entity on our construction projects. Princeton University will be moving ahead with final paving of University and Alexander in conjunction with their completion of the Arts and Transit. So that's sometime this summer. More details will be coming. We had the opportunity through an invitation from the university to participate in a bike planning exercise that was going on at the university campus. So that was a great opportunity. We had staff join with university faculty and staff and students to talk about where cycling routes should be. The engineering department has been working on a couple of activities. The DEP had recently sent out a new stormwater draft permit, the MS4 permits. Public Works and Engineering have reviewed that draft permit, and I'm sure in the next 6 months we'll be back to give you a lot more detail about what's included in that permit if it does in fact go forward for implementation in 2018. But we are going to be submitting a letter of comments back to DEP. The deadline is April 3rd, so we'll be compiling that. And the main component related to that is a maintenance requirement for privately owned systems. There's a concern that You know, some homeowners associations may not even be aware that they are supposed to have maintenance plans in effect and that they're supposed to be continuously working on them. And so we think that there needs to be more assistance through training and potentially funding for private systems to be able to comply with that requirement. Lawrence Township, I think, has also submitted similar comments as well. We kicked off the parking study with our consultant on Friday, and we are looking ahead to setting up 3 public information centers. The first one is in April, and it could potentially be the week around the 19th of April. That would be an open house in the evening. Then we're looking to have a second open house in June before schools get out, and then a third open house in September. And so that would be, the first meeting would be just to start getting feedback from residents, visitors, parkers about what their perceptions and concerns are. The second meeting would be to bring back what the consultant has found through their inventory and analysis. And then the third meeting would be to talk about draft recommendations. So in the next week or so, we'll firm up all of the dates, and we'll work with the mayor to get a press release out so people are aware of what the process is. There will be online surveys, paper surveys. So we'll be working very quickly on that project. And then again, as Mr. Quinn mentioned, the Planning Board Master Plan Committee is working on evaluating draft circulation element language to completely rewrite the circulation element, more in terms of complete streets and alternative transportation, not just vehicles. So, great progress. That's it. Thank you.
Terrific.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
Have
Schiff.
one. Just have a couple of things for council this evening. One, as council is aware, earlier this year we had some discussions about the Waxwood development. Council indicated that they would come back by March 31st to review this. I'm asking that we actually have that presentation next Monday. That will extend us beyond the 31st, but I want to let, and we've sat down with the subcommittee. We've also been in contact with the developer, and we'll be ready for that on the 3rd. In addition, I wanted to inform council we've had a discussion with the university last week, and they've indicated they're now at the point where they are ready to transfer the Franklin lot to the municipality. So that process will begin shortly. In addition, I wanted to run by 2 other issues, one being, and I believe I put this in the Friday memo, and I just wanted to congratulate the municipal court. They have been identified as a model court for bail reform and how they are managing bail reform, so I want to give them their kudos for that. And then the final thing is staff is now investigating and looking during Communiversity this year, parking at the Spring Street Garage, providing a flat rate event parking. We're just looking through some of the logistics for that, but it looks like what we would like to do is at a certain point that morning indicate there will be a flat rate at the garage of $15 for the day.
Great, thank you. All right. Mr. Liverman looks excited by that. I'm excited. All right, thank you. All right, I think we've come to the end of our reports, so now we'll move on to the main item this evening, which is the 2017 municipal budget. Just to outline the process here, we're going to start with a presentation from Scott Sillers, Chair of the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee, and this is a presentation, an annual presentation on the budget, so we're excited to have Scott here for that. Then we'll move on to public hearing for an ordinance. It's more of a house cleaning, or we do it every year just to establish a cap bank we'll have the hearing on the municipal budget, but we also have a resolution to amend it. So we're going to go through all 4 of those steps. But we will start with Scott, so welcome. And our monitors don't work, so we're going to have to swivel around to watch the presentation.
Oh, good. Okay.
Fine, we have
Okay.
handouts coming.
Okay. All right. Good evening. This will just be we've been through this a number of times now. I think that you know the routine, and so I will be much more brief than I normally am. We'll review the 2016 results, 2017 budget from a high level, and trends in taxable assessed values and core debt. The one thing I want to note here is that there's several numbers that are slightly different than what is in the final budgets. There's been a couple numbers that have been shuffling back and forth. As a whole, they're pretty much spot on, but if you try to tick and tie every detail like some people at home like to do, they may be off by a penny or two here or there. Just starting off with a high-level summary of this year's budget compared to last year. If we just focus in on the numbers in blue starting at the bottom, the municipal tax rate is budgeted to increase by about 2.3%. The total municipal taxes are increasing by almost 4%, and the difference there is being financed by a slight increase in taxable assessed values of 1.4% increase in assessed values. The total appropriations is just going up modestly by about 0.8%. And the difference between that and the municipal tax rate increase is due to the fact that we've got such extreme leverage on having to finance on flat revenues on everything except for municipal taxes, and municipal taxes represent about 50% of our revenue. The only other thing that really went up is the PU fair share, Princeton University fair share payment, which went up under contract. And I just have to, every time I do this, point out that once again, parking revenues to the municipality were flat because we have not done anything on parking rates now in about 10 years. And since parking fees are about $3.5 million, had we been applying some sort of steady increase year in, year out, we would have been somewhere close to $1 million, $500,000, $1 million higher in revenues coming out now. I know that you guys have been studying, but one of the things that Mark DeShield had recommended earlier this year, I think, was to put a policy in place where all the major fee items are kind of automatically looked at every year and reset to appropriate level. You can then go ahead and do your studies to make sure that they make sense, but in the meantime, the taxpayer is not necessarily funding the entire shortfall of what otherwise would have been the case. The other just minor thing I want to point out in my comparison versus what you've seen from staff is that when the advisory committee looks at the budgets, they always compare it to the original introduced budget from last year, not things that have been modified by grant revenue that comes in over the course of the year. So there's a minor difference in the starting budgets. Moving on to 2016 results. As you know, we try to manage our budgets so that at the end of the year, when all the results come in, that surplus doesn't change over the course of the year. And we go through a detailed calculation, which is basically taking the budget and translating it into a set of projections that take into account things that you're not allowed to take into account in the budget process per municipal law. This past year, we were off quite a bit. We were off $1.8 million in positive increase in surplus compared to a plan of basically being flat. And if we want to go through the pieces of that, about $1 million of that $1.8 million was based on, was a result of one-time items that came about that were largely unforeseeable. They included $375,000 of cancellation of New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust debt due to reconciliations that have taken place over the past few years. We received $400,000 from FEMA last year, which was not in the budget. And then we've had various audit adjustments and other cancellations that took place. But that still left about $800,000 in revenues, in surplus that was generated that we probably could have foreseen had we been a little bit less conservative on our forecast. Excuse me. There we go. Going on, looking at the 2017 projected change in surplus, once again, we go through the same exercise and come down to slight decrease in the surplus based on our current budget. Now, I think that some of the numbers in here are slightly conservative. I think it will be a little bit better on municipal tax collection, a little bit better on lapsed appropriation reserve, so we should come in probably positive overall on change in surplus over the course of the year. And Mark is going to introduce some changes to the budget later tonight that will partially offset some of these results, but overall there's not going to be a material change in surplus to what you see, from what you see here. When you look long term at the surplus, we have a policy of having surplus equaling 15 to 20% of our appropriations, and right now we're at about 18%. So even though it's been increasing the past few years, we're still comfortably within the range there. Changing over to the assessed values for a moment, this basically shows where the 1.4% change in assessed values came from. We had a $98.8 million increase in total assessed values 2017 versus 2016. $79.7 million of that was residential. About half of that was from the compliance plan, and the other half was from changes in assessed values due to additions, new properties, etc. And if you look at changes in taxable assessed values longer term, you can see from these charts here, which compare assessed values from year to year and cumulative assessed values, that the changes in assessed values are starting to increase at an increasing rate after falling in 2011 through 2013. And cumulatively, we have now had a $75 million change in assessed values since we first had the reassessment in 2010. So the recession and the compliance plan resulted in a diminishment of our total assessed values over the first 3 years through 2013. And since then, we've had a gradual increase and now are back in positive territory. It's important just to remember as you go, as we look at the economics of where our funds come from and where our opportunities are that we realize that 80% of our assessed values is derived from residential properties. So, any major changes in any other category is likely to not be material compared to the overall assessed values. And then finally, I just want to briefly touch on debt. That, as you know, we've got a debt policy that focuses on core debt, which is basically debt that's funded by general revenues, which are mainly taxes. And our core debt has been flat over the course of the last 5 years. We've done a good job managing the capital spending, and hope to continue to do so. We've got to pick up the capital spending plan here next and make sure that we're still on a path that makes sense for everybody. And that is it with the presentation. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Scott. Are there any questions for Scott?
I just want to comment, a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Very, very detailed. And I want to thank everybody for all the service and time that they put in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, a lot for this. So your question about the residential values and bringing that up, is there more to that? I mean, do you feel like it's just not worth, say, trying to attract businesses or things like that? I mean, when you were saying a change would not really affect.
No, it's always worth going after everything you can. It's just there's no silver bullet out there. Every time we start diving into one area, like commercial or apartments, et cetera, we look at numbers that are significant in their own right, but when you look at the overall picture, you get bummed out right away. I mean, you go back and look at the apartments. We had a $20 million increase in assessed values of apartments, 7.6%. But that's only, it's only 200,000. It's only $100,000 in revenues to the town.
I know. Something seems off to me about the way that commercial properties are assessed. I know we've had business people come in and say, I pay so much property taxes, but a lot of residents pay more than a lot of businesses.
The formula is different on how it's
I know.
assessed, as you
I just think it doesn't seem right.
But we also don't have a lot of commercial properties in the town, relative to other towns.
Thanks.
We've got a lot of very, very valuable real estate, residential real estate.
Mr. Miller?
Scott, do you have any sense of how much of the increase in residential was attributable to tear downs and replacement with the houses of increased value, and how much was attributable to new construction?
No, I don't. We can get that with a little bit more work, Bernie, but I think that a majority of it was due to tear downs, though. It was roughly $38 million that was a compliance plan, so that'd say 38 roughly. $40 million was everything else. Yeah, I can get that number and get back to you, though.
I think that what you just said clarifies a lot of it to me. In other words, that the 38 million was attributable, roughly half attributable to the compliance plan,
right,
and half attributable to a mix of tear downs and replacement with units of increased value plus new construction. And I think it's probably quite clear that most of it comes from tear downs.
Yeah, plus it depends on, where you look at tear downs. There's some fairly valuable tear downs going on Hodge Road, for example.
Yep, Mr. Quinn?
I'd just like to echo Mr. Liverman's thanks to CFAC. It's very rewarding to serve on CFAC in my first year. And I'd also point out to my colleagues that we're going to be losing two of council's representatives to CFAC, and put in a plug for anyone who would like to join. It's a great group. The amount of experience and brain power at the table is impressive, and all questions are welcome and are answered in a very helpful way. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We next come to the public hearing for 2017-9, which is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A 4-45.14. Well, I would like to start by opening up the public hearing on this ordinance. This is something we do every year. All right, I'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Liverman. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms.
I thought it was Mr. Miller tonight. I'm sorry. Let Mr. Miller speak. I'm sorry.
Mr. Liverman? Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Okay. No voting twice here. But the ordinance passes, and next we come to the public hearing on the 2017 municipal budget, and I'd like to open up the public hearing.
Good evening, Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey Avenue. I'm very concerned about the possibility of a municipal property tax increase in Princeton. Those of us who have had a recent increase in our assessment will pay more even if the rate does not go up. We are going to, if we are going to maintain a racially, culturally, and economically diverse community, we need to hold the line on the tax rate. The proposed budget is 9.5% more than what we actually spent last year in 2016. 9.5% more than we actually spent. Now that's without the proposed amendments that Mark is going to bring up, but that's the budget as it is right now. There was a $100 million increase in Princeton's tax base for 2017. $100 million increase in our tax base. That's a significant increase in revenue without touching the rate at all. As I noted, those Princetonians dependent upon, I noted this before, that are dependent upon Social Security received an increase of 0.3% to cover inflation. 0.3%. So inflation overall is small. And it's important that we have a budget that is responsive to the financial realities of many of those who live in Princeton. And there are a lot in the middle who are struggling to make this work. I'd like to see budget cuts that get us to a budget that includes the increased income that the town will be enjoying without also raising the tax rate. That is, as you know, we are going to have more revenue coming into the town just based upon the existing tax rate without any rate increase at all. I'd also like to stick with last year's actual expenditures rather than the increases that you have proposed in your budget. I think that the actual expenditures last year are reasonable to achieve. For instance, if you look at the utilities listing in your budget, last year, the amount of money spent on utilities was significantly less than was budgeted, and I think we could hit that same target again. Now, I want to mention consolidation. One of the reasons for consolidation was to find ways to be more efficient. I actually think that working with other municipalities in the county, there are still more efficiencies to be achieved through shared services and shared equipment. I agree very much with the proposal of several weeks ago that we share our dispatch expenses with others. That was proposed during consolidation, and I'm very glad to see this idea moving forward. With GPS and GIS, all you need for dispatch is a workstation, which can be located almost anywhere. Merging our operations with municipalities such as Hopewell and Lawrence, or even a county-wide system, would be a great way to save funds. Another cut I would like to see is in leaf pickup. I think that the Environmental Commission has already mentioned, I think Steve Filtner mentioned before too, that we need to encourage people to mulch their leaves on their property, that this is the environmentally right thing to do. And it would save us considerable savings to skip one of our leaf pickups. And as you know, we have a recycling center in Lawrence, and people can go out there in between pickups and drop off their leaves that way, so they're not stuck with leaves they don't want if they can't mulch them. Again, I have a question regarding the capital budget line item, which doubled, and why we are doubling that line item. I'd like to bring up again the idea of renewable resources to produce energy, and I have some ideas to suggest to Mr. Miller on that came up in the context of Valley Road School. And finally, on the line item for $100,000 that has been corrected to read accumulated vacation leave instead of sick leave, I'd like to see a reduction in the amount of vacation time being carried from one year to the other. This time is for staff R&R, and I would recommend capping the amount that can be carried from one year to another so that staff can't carry a full year's worth of vacation time. The purpose of vacation time is for staff to use it and to return refreshed and ready to go back to work. All in all, I feel it is very important to find ways to live within our means and avoid a tax increase. Thank you, and I hope that you really take seriously what I'm suggesting, and I look forward to Mr. DeShield's proposed changes that you all are thinking about.
Thanks, Kev. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? No? Or the public hearing, I should say. Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and just see if there's any other further comments from council before we hear about the proposed changes. Okay, then we'll move on to the 17-106 resolution authorizing amendments to the 2017 municipal budget. And Ms. Webb or Mr. DeShield?
Actually, as I outlined before, a number of changes, and I'm going to let Ms. Webb just kind of walk you through the changes being proposed. If you approve these changes this evening, we'll have to advertise, and then there'll be a second public hearing on these amendments on Monday night.
Correct.
Okay, but I just want to make sure I understand the process. So we'd approve the resolution tonight,
Correct.
but then it would be almost like an ordinance introduction, but
Right.
we actually
We're
pass
going to
the resolution.
introduce the resolution tonight, making these changes for the amendment. And at the next meeting, we will hold a public hearing on the amendment changes and then adopt the budget. So what you have before you tonight are a couple of changes. I've outlined them in the memo that I put together, but I'll go through them one by one. A couple of the recommendations, most of these came from administration. So we have the surplus. We're increasing the amount to be utilized from our fund balance for 2017. We're increasing it $130,000 to cover the planning board neighborhood character study and some other planning board initiatives. That was already part of the original budget, but we were just going to absorb that in our regular revenues, and administration felt, given where we ended in 2016, we were comfortable with recommending taking this money out of the surplus. In addition, last year, the surplus anticipated was $6.1 million. The introduced budget that you have before you was at $6 million, so we want to increase that back an additional $100,000 to keep it in line with what we anticipated in 2016. And then we had a grant that I put in the budget, which was a grant we've gotten every year, Cops and Shops. For whatever reason, this year we have not heard whether we're going to be awarded a grant, so we took the revenue and the appropriation both out. And then I'll come back to the amount to be raised by taxes, but let me go through the appropriation changes. So as you well know, Jeff Grosser took on the duties of the assistant administrator. I think him and Mark have worked out that Jeff is going to stay on as the health officer with a significant savings in the salary and wage line for the health officer. So I've reduced that by approximately $75,000, which is a good chunk of Jeff's salary, leaving some money in there for a stipend for Jeff and some additional funding for the part-time clerical support, just expanding their hours a little bit. On the flip side, on the health department's other expense budget, as Jeff continues to do more administrative work, some of his tasks are going to fall to an additional nursing services, so we've increased that budget by $32,000. Again, the offset is the savings in the salary and wage line. The last change that I made in the budget is for group insurance. We're saving roughly $34,800 for a vacant health officer position that we're not going to need to keep in our group insurance. And then there was a small amount that was outside our budget spending cap. Per the state guidelines, we had to move it back inside, so the net effect on that budget is roughly $16,000. So all these changes that we've made, we've reduced the amount to be raised by taxation by $308,000. So when we started the 2017 budget process, we were, the introduced budget was about $90 as a tax increase, and right now we're right around $55. So we brought that significantly down on the municipal rate, to go sort of in line with where KIP was heading. So there are all the changes that we're recommending for the 2017 municipal budget. As was mentioned, these are going to have to be advertised. They cross the threshold. Otherwise, we would have been able to make these changes and adopt tonight, but we can't do that. We have to have a public hearing on these amendments, which we'll do at the next meeting, and then move forward with adoption.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Webb? All right. I know that represents a lot of work to bring the budget down. So I know we were scrambling last year for about half that amount. So I want to thank Mark and Sandy and the Finance Committee and everybody else who was involved in that project. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the amendments? Moved by Ms. Howard, seconded by Mr. Miller. Any further comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Can we do that by voice vote? Is that all right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, it was unanimous. And the public hearing on the amended budget will be at our next meeting, which is Monday, April 3rd, 2017. All right, and next we come to our ordinance public hearings. The first is 2017-11, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton continuing in full force and effect the provisions of section 22-15 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, regulating the hours of operation of restaurants, retail food establishments, retail sales, and personal services businesses on properties within or abutting a residential zone. Is there, well, actually, I would like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
All right, the ordinance passes unanimously. Next, 2017-12, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning the Princeton High School Westminster Choir College Neighborhood Permit Parking District and amending the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968, and the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance.
Oh, I'm recusing myself because I'm a property owner in the area.
Okay. You can see if you can make it to the back of the room. So it doesn't look like anyone is commenting on this. I'm going to open up the public hearing. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Liverman and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. And we have one ordinance introduction tonight, 2017-15, an ordinance of the municipality of Princeton authorizing the vacation of a 10-foot wide access easement across Block 1403, Lot 18 on the Princeton tax map, which corresponds to 221 Herrontown Road. Do we need an explanation for this? This is to vacate an easement that the municipality no longer needs.
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Ms. Krummeller, seconded by Mr. Liverman. Is there any discussion or questions? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
All right, ordinance is introduced unanimously, and the public hearing will be on April 24th, 2017. Next, we come to our resolutions. The first one we took up earlier in the meeting. 17108, resolution authorizing 2017-2018 license to operate canoe and kayak rental concession with Stephen Androsco, DBA, Griggstown Canoe and Kayak Rental, AKA Griggstown Canoe Rental, for $55,000. This means that spring is on the way, or summer's on the way.
And that's for 2 years.
Yeah, that's really great that it's for 2 years. It's
Yep.
a good idea.
So is there a motion to approve the resolution? Moved by Mr. Miller,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. Next, 17109, a resolution by the municipality of Princeton supporting the establishment of a no stopping or standing zone on Nassau Street, New Jersey, Route 27, along the northbound side between Pine Street and Murray Place. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krumiller and seconded by Mr. Miller. And this resolution came as a result of some concerns raised by the Murray Street neighbors. Are there any questions or comments from council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passed unanimously. Next is Resolution 17110, resolution urging the United States Congress to address climate change by enacting matched carbon fee and dividend legislation. Is there a motion to approve?
So
Oh,
moved.
but before we do,
Well, I just want to recognize that it's been moved by Mr. Quinn and seconded by Mr. Miller.
just can we change the, I should have done this because I think I might have submitted this. I mean, it's my fault that we should change out the Princeton Environmental Commission with Princeton Council in the resolution.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to recommend that as an amendment, friendly amendment?
I don't know if it rises
Well,
to that.
that's
Yes,
what we're,
okay.
that's
Yes, I
what we're
do.
doing. That's why we put it on
Okay.
the floor first, so.
Okay, yeah, I do recommend that amendment.
Okay, so Ms. Krumiller is amending that we replace all mention of Princeton Environmental Commission with mention of the Princeton Council. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? Seconded by Mr. Quinn.
Or the mayor and council, we usually say,
All
don't
right,
we?
yep, mayor and council of Princeton. Okay. So it's been moved by Ms. Krumiller, seconded by Mr. Quinn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the resolution itself? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes unanimously. Next, we come to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature, passed by a single vote. Are there any items anyone would like removed from the consent agenda?
I think there's a correction needed in the
You-
second.
not on.
I think there's a correction needed in the second. No, upon second reading, I think it's okay.
Okay. Is there, are we okay with?
I make a motion that we take it in altogether, in bulk.
Well, right, so you're
I'm
okay,
making a
you're
motion-
moving the
I
consent
make a-
agenda.
I make a motion that we move the consent agenda.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved by Mr. Liverman, seconded by Ms. Krumiller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes unanimously. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Quinn, seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.